Hey everybody, welcome to the video, welcome to the channel. My name is Mike and it is a beautiful snowy, icy day. I don't know if you can see the ice kind of glistening in the trees behind us. We had a little bit of ice storm. It spared quite a bit of damage for us. We didn't really have a lot going on, but it did reveal a weakness in the fact that all the chainsaws I have, none of them are running the way they should. If you're looking for part 2 on the road drag, hopefully that'll be the next video. On Thursday, we're not going to do any fabricating in this, but Mondays when I plan on working on it again, it's supposed to be gorgeous, mid-40s and sunshine, and all this mess should be gone. So hopefully we'll be back on the road drag project soon. Let's talk about these saws and the whole reason I'm doing this. One, this is my 55 Husqvarna chainsaw. I think I bought it last summer, just under a couple $100. The 55 is the predecessor to the 455 Rancher that you see sold in a lot of box stores. It's a great little saw. It's definitely a very handy saw. I had some issues with it last year, and we'll talk about that once we tear into it. And I talked to Logger Wade about it, who has another YouTube channel. If you're not familiar, I'll leave an info card in the description, or a link in the description for you to check out. He found me a parts 55 for free that hopefully out of these two 55s, we can make this. The whole reason we're trying to tackle all this today, we don't really have a local specialty saw shop that works on Husqvarna. We have one that kind of dabbles in Husqvarna, and every time I take it there, and they're great people, don't get me wrong, but saws are not their main priority. So every time I take it there, it normally takes a couple months for the saw to get back to me. And oftentimes it kind of comes back with the same problem I sent it in for. So I decided it's high time we learn how to do this stuff ourselves. So if you're here to learn something, we're learning together. And here's your disclaimer, I'm not a professional. So if you try this stuff and something happens to your saw, okay? You're gonna wanna consult a professional. We're just gonna learn together though, if that's what you're here for. This is a Husqvarna 120 Mark II. It's a mid-30cc saw, like a little arborist saw. I had a subscriber that actually sent this in to me. It is a refurb, and ever since what's going on? No kidding. That's pretty exciting. And ever since I've had it, it runs really well, but as soon as you're out of the cut, it shuts itself off. So we're gonna try to fix that. And I got an issue with the chain brake we're gonna try to address. And then last summer, I also bought this used Husqvarna 372 off of eBay. And ever since I got it, it has not been idling right or running right. And I tried to do it in a video, but I made a couple really simple, common mistakes when I was doing it. Some of you guys pointed it out, so I did a little bit more research. And I got a couple more tools, so hopefully we can do this stuff right today. So one thing that a lot of people suggested that I need to do this tuning right, especially on the top end of these saws, is a little tachometer. So that's what we have. It just came with some basic tools, some carburetor adjustment tools. The newer Husqvarnas have kind of a specialty end for the carb adjustment. The older one is just like this, a little flat screwdriver. But we'll get into that as we go. We're gonna start using this on all of them, try to get them tuned up and running right. By the way, if you are new to the channel, I limit myself to 1 outro and 2 intros. That's it. This was the second intro. So the text message alert, it's staying. Let's get to work and see if we can figure this out. Let's start with the 55 Rancher. So this was the one I had. And you can see right here, that's how that's supposed to look. Well, that one's broken off. Now, I haven't had this apart yet, but we're getting ready to find out. Hopefully, we can use the flywheel out of this and replace it into this. Seems okay. Wade did get me some new parts to rebuild this too, so I might just put a new one on. There is the chance, and I just don't have the money for it right now, but maybe this summer we can go through this second one and come out with 2 55s for the property. That would be all right. I think that just sits down in there. I don't think it's held on by anything. Yeah. There we go. Now there is one tool I don't have. I don't have anything to measure this air gap. It's supposed to be 0.3 millimeters on the 55. You can find that on the technical specs online, or you can buy a manual, keep it at the house, either or. It's supposed to be 0.3 millimeters air gap right there. I don't have a way to measure that, so we're just going to kind of have to go with what it is whenever we get the new one on. And then I've got one ordered, it just hasn't come in yet. Husqvarna makes, it's like a little, I mean, think of a credit card, but Husqvarna makes it the space it needs to be, and then you just bend it and you set it in there, and you make your adjustments there. It's a real simple tool. I just don't have one on me right now. But whenever it comes in, we'll come back and get that all adjusted. Provided we can even get this thing to go together today. Now, I watched a lot of videos on this last night. And a lot of them removed these flywheels the exact same way, and they all said the same thing. This isn't how you're supposed to do it, but it works for me, which kind of made me laugh. I'm assuming they want you to use an actual flywheel puller. We'll practice on the one that's bad, and then hopefully we'll have it figured out when we come to get the good one off. So they said back the screw or the nut off, but leave it still threaded on. Check. Went to get my little pry bar, didn't realize the tip was broken off. Had to take the grinder, put a little flat edge on it. See if we can get that worked under there. I'll show you it out, but parts of this are thicker than others. So I'm gonna opt for a meaty section. If I can get under it. Get it worked in there. And then they said just give it a hit. Look at that. This is what I was talking about. That part of it's thicker than other parts. I put it under that meaty section. It popped right off. What they want you to do would be my guess. You see that little indentation right there? A puller sits down in that and comes down with the little claw on each side, and you tighten it up and it should pop it off. That's probably what they want you to do. But you know, we didn't. I got an idea. What if instead of hitting the actual fan, we tap this nut? You think that's enough vibration to do it? Let's try that. I gotta get something to hold these out of the way real quick. We will just zip tie these out of the way. Pull those back. Let's see if we can't just hit on that. I got a bigger hammer, but we're not gonna, we're just doing little taps here. Did we break anything with that approach? No. No. It came right off. Like I said, they probably want you to center up a puller right there in the center of that. That's why it's got a D10 in it. And do it that way. But, you know, a fella doesn't have a puller. I couldn't find the exact torque spec on this. But most of the saw shop channels I were watching just ran off an impact anyway. So that's what we're going to do. I think that'll be fine. We'll get this plastic cover back on. And then this just clicks in. You got to get these little wires tucked under there. Trying to hold that plastic in place. Okay. The next thing, Wade got me these parts as well. New spring, new handle. And I want to go ahead and replace this one because you can see it's got, I mean, there's no point in taking this thing apart and then doing 2 pulls and breaking the string. So the spring on the 55 is set up pretty nice. It comes into a little plastic case like that. Some of these, the springs kind of feel like they're set up like party favors out to get you, but these are pretty user-friendly. And then it just slides back in there. You just line it up on that. But I noticed this new one has a little bit different pattern to it in that corner. And it wasn't quite fitting in there. And I probably could have taken some time with a file and cleaned it up and reshaped that edge just a little bit to make it fit. But honestly, the old spring really wasn't that bad. I was more interested in just replacing the handle and the string itself, or the rope. So we'll just go ahead and put the old spring back in there. Put a new plastic pulley in with the new rope. Then we should be good to go. Got a knot tied on that end. And this part's crucial. You're gonna want to not do it like this, unless you just want to practice. Getting a little excited here, doing a little premature knot tying. And once you get your practice knot done, go ahead and undo that knot, pull it back through the handle. And it's a good time to remember that you have to go through the cover first before you tie it to the handle. And you just line that piece of plastic up on there. You just wrap the rope around. The biggest thing is just making sure that the way you're wrapping the rope is going to pull against the spring so that it recoils itself. Put this screw in the center. And there you go. And the way I like to do it, I just run the rope through the handle and then pull some tension on the rope and then tie the knot, and the knot just slides right in. I ended up having to do this twice. The first time I did it, I didn't quite get it tight enough, so I had to undo the knot and redo it. But there you go. Okay, let me get that on. See if we can get it fired up. So as I'm putting this back together, I'm just kind of looking down through here and getting that lined up so it's not sitting on top of anything. What can happen, and I've done this before, is you end up with something kind of sitting weird on that plastic and bound up. Those seal screws, you can see the wear marks. That sits in there like that. So what I'm looking for here, well, one, I'm looking for the screws. Where'd they go? I'm just looking for these to run in real easy. They shouldn't be trying to close any gaps or pull anything closed. I don't want the screws to actually do any work. I just want the screws to hold the cover on, if that makes sense. If I can get to this with the impact, I'm going to have to use the... And I'm looking, I don't want any gaps here. That's to get a screwdriver in to pop that off. But I don't want any gaps here. If I have anything there, then any gaps there, then that means I'm bound up on here or sitting wrong or sitting crooked on something. I would just back those back out, kind of play with it a little bit until it's sat where it needs to sit. And then we'll see. I don't want anything to fire up. I just want to... This all has a lot of compression, or that air gap is off, one of the two. It doesn't have a decomp valve. You might be able to put one there if a fella wanted, but a fella really doesn't want to. Oh, daggone it. A fella needs to learn to tie better knots. Okay, take two. Tell you what. Let's just go ahead and put a bar and chain on this thing. See if we can't get it to do something here. Air filter doesn't look great, does it? So one thing for sure, I definitely need to get a new air filter picked up. I'm guessing it was that hard to pull just because it's one, like 12 degrees outside, and two, it hasn't been started in probably 4 months. Hopefully we're okay now. It does have a lot of compression, and I do wonder, not for the sake of the strength of pulling it, but just saving some strings if a fella could add a decomp valve on there. I'll have to look into that. So since it is running, which is exciting, let's take this little tachometer we bought and let's get her, see if we can get her tuned in. I looked it up on Husqvarna's manual online. The bottom end, when she's idling, should be 2,500 RPM. The top side should be 12.5, 12,500 RPM. 12,500, however you want to say it. That's what it's supposed to be. Let me get this cover back on. Yeah, we're going to want to get an air filter picked up for sure. I hope that sunshine sticks around. That is the difference maker in the temperature today. You know, I mean, it's 12, but with the sunshine, it feels like 12 and a half. So before we get started on this, I've never used one of these before, but I did read the instructions, so I got that going for me. And I watched a couple videos on it. They say you're supposed to get as close to the spark plug as possible. It does come with a little wire, if a fellow wants. It goes in the back like this. And then you can put the wire, I'm assuming, you could stick the wire down here by the spark plug maybe, if you wanted to do that. They also make some versions of these that have little alligator clamps that clip onto here to hold it for you. We'll play around with it, see what it does. All right. Let's see if it's any easier to start now that it's been started once. Like I said, I've never used a tachometer before, and honestly, I've never really tuned a chainsaw before either. And a lot of people say you don't need the tachometer for the bottom end part of the tuning, but I figure since I'm new at this, it might be kind of nice to have a hard metric. And since there's stats on it, or specs on it, it'll just give me a good frame of reference. Now I'm just going to walk you through what I'm doing here, and this is based on some tips and tricks I got from some friends. But first I start with the air idle screw. If the chain's spinning, I turn it until the chain just stops spinning. If it's not spinning, I turn it just before it starts to spin. Once I get that, I'm just going to kind of double check the numbers on the tachometer and see if it's close to what the specs are supposed to be. Once I get that idle where I want it, I go to the low side. So I'm going to turn it back and forth, and I'm going to try to find a sweet spot between lean and rich. When it's too lean, it's going to cut itself out, and when it's too rich, it's obviously going to cut itself out. So we're looking for that sweet spot on the low side between the two. Once I find that, I kind of double check my numbers on the tachometer as well. And I kind of check the trigger response as well. If it's in the sweet spot, if it's where it's supposed to be, there should be decent trigger response. It should pick up pretty quick. And that's kind of what I'm looking for. I'm going to run it back and forth several times just so I can kind of hear it a little bit better. And then after that, we'll go to just the high side, and that'll be all with the tachometer. And then once I get the high side where the tachometer is supposed to be, then I go back and adjust the idle screw one more time to make sure that the chain comes to a complete stop once you let off the trigger. And that should be it. So I think the 55 is ready to go, which I'm excited about. It's probably the saw I use most. I think I am going to take this one. I'll probably take this back to the house and tear it down and just see what the inside looks like. Maybe take my little bore scope and look down and see what the cylinder looks like inside, and maybe get some parts and have two 55s. I think that'd be worth doing. Let me get this cleaned up, and then we'll see if we can get 372 out here and get it tuned up. And then I've got dead persimmon tree. The top of it broke out from the ice that came through. We'll go ahead and get the rest of it down on the ground. That way we can get these into the wood and see what they do. I had a lot of people make the comment that it sounded like it wasn't tuned right, and it was running, well, all over the place based on the comment section. So I figured, since it is a rather expensive saw, I would hold off on using it until I got an actual tachometer and I could actually get hard numbers on what this thing is doing. That way I don't burn it up. Spark plug is there. This one does have a decompression valve right there. Only for starters, let's fire it up, get to idle, and let's actually see where we're at and how far off we are, and then we'll make the adjustments from there. Let's make sure it's actually got enough gas to do this. Oh, don't have any gas. I'm out of gas. I'm out of gas all around. Hopefully that's enough to get this thing tuned in. Well, that is flat where it fell out. The gas comes out the top here, right? That's what it's supposed to do. I thought so. I think, yeah. I like to take the plug out and just fill gas on the inside to make sure it's got enough. Looks like that's what I did when I took the plug out. Okay, well, we made progress. Was it frustrating to get there? Yeah, it was pretty frustrating, but I think it sounds good. The low end looks good. The high end, it said 13,000 on the Husqvarna thing, but what do you guys know on this? Not what you think, but what do you know? Should I leave it at 12,000, a little bit low since I plan on doing Alaskan milling? Will that help reduce the chances of burning this thing up prematurely if I leave it just a little bit lower on the top end? What do you know on that? I need to know that, because that I don't know. All right, let's do the 120 next. So this one had a couple issues. The simplest one being I broke that. Look at that. I used some fancy JB Weld. Even tried to match OEM colors. Just kidding. That's the way the JB Weld comes. But what a happy coincidence that is. The other issue is, like I said, as soon as I get out of a cut, she shuts off every time. So we're going to see with this tachometer and a little adjustment if we can't get it to come out of that. Like that. That goes like that. Take my glove off for this part. There's a little bitty screw. Uh-oh. There was a little bitty screw. Now come on. Daggone it, bud. Where? And you'll see how it's just flopping around. Has this little fella. This slides right in here. And it's just a spring that rides. There's a little detent. And that spring rides in that little detent. Now it's got some spring pressure on it. I wonder if it goes the other way. Like that, maybe. I bet it goes like that. That would make more sense because it's supposed to lock it. Oh no. You know, this video's turning out to be something. Well, JB Weld didn't hold, would you? Go figure. We're putting it on anyway. I'm just gonna have to order another one. Just have to be gentle while we put this together. It's gonna go on like that. I gotta grab a chain. I can still use the chain brake. I just can't pull on this side. I kind of gotta favor this side. I'll just have to get a new handle ordered. Yeah. Yeah, that's the problem with the ice. It breaks the trees. Okay. I can get that bottom idle where it needs to be. I can get the RPM where it needs to be on the low side and on the idle screw. But as soon as I mess with that high side and I take it down to where it's supposed to be, you let off, it dies. All right, so I need your help on this one. And I apologize, the Rode microphone has died already. The cold is just taking the energy out of everything today, bud. But I'm not sure. I can get that low side where I want it, where I think it sounds right. I can get the idle air screw adjusted. Everything matches up with the tachometer on the bottom side of it, down to 3,000. Good trigger response. Everything they say I should have on that end. It looks good. I feel like I'm doing that part right. The top end, I get it to match where it's supposed to be on the RPM, but you see it as soon as I let off the trigger, she's done. And I feel like we've been doing it enough. It's warm enough. It's warmed up by now. So I don't know. Like I said, if we're learning today, we're learning together. So if you know why, if you work on saws, this is the key thing, okay? We're all listening to this part. If you work on saws and you're very familiar with this and you know why it's doing this, leave it in the comments. I want to know. It's a handy little saw. It's a nice sized little saw for clearing trails and cleaning up and doing tops. So here's the trees. 2 persimmon trees. Pretty good size for persimmon trees. They're definitely dead. There was a top right there. It is now right here. It came down with the ice. Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and get those 2 on the ground so the rest of that top doesn't fall on us unexpectedly. Be a good test for the saw. We'll use a 55 on that little side, and then we'll try a 372 on that one. Just get them in the wood, see how they act. We're not gonna do a whole lot of cleanup. I just want to test the saws out. See what we got here. Pretty happy with that one. Let's try the 372 on the other one. Plus tonight is Saturday. I gotta get this video out for you guys tomorrow. It'll be a long night. Nice thing is everything's iced over. You can it just snaps like toothpicks. And we're gonna leave this high. We're gonna leave it here. Chelsea forages mushrooms. These probably aren't any good to her, but if it's got mushroom activity there, it'll probably grow some more. That right in there, maybe. There's not gonna be a lot holding on. It's gonna do whatever it does. I think they ran pretty good. If you guys cut every day or use saws every day, let me know what it sounds like in the video if they sound okay to you. I'm pretty excited about it. Was the learning process a little bit frustrating? Yeah. Learning processes are always frustrating, but driving 20 minutes to town, dropping your saw off, getting a call in a couple weeks and maybe getting it back repaired the way you want it repaired in a month or so is also very frustrating. It's kind of more like a frustration investment. Today was frustrating, but from here on out, it just gets easier. If I think I have a problem, if I think it's out of tune, I can go straight up to the barn, I can get the tools, I can get everything out, and I can go through them. And each time I do it, it'll be quicker and quicker and quicker, into the point that someday, I imagine, I'd be able to just pull it out of my pocket and do it real quick by ear to get me through the day in the woods, and then I could go and get the tachometer out one day and do it that way. The more you do it, the better you're going to get at it, and the faster you're going to get at it. It took me about 4 hours to do all this today, which is a very extensive amount of time, but it'll save me a lot of time in the long run, and I think it's worth it. Learning can be hard, but not knowing how to do things is also very hard. You gotta pick your hard, you know what I mean? Tomorrow, like I said, Chelsea and I are going to do some work on the goat barn and the chicken coop. We're going to get you a video on that at the end of February, but I want a big progress video from when we first started moving dirt to when we got a bunch of posts and timber and boards up. I want a big progress video. So I'm going to wait till the end of February when we should have a lot of that done. And then Monday, I'm going to put, I don't want to say finishing touches, but make more progress on the road drag. So road drag part 2, get it in the gravel, if we can find any, to put it to the test and see what it does. So that'll be coming Thursday. Hope you guys are enjoying the channel. Hope you're enjoying whatever it is you're doing today. Hopefully the JB weld is dry on the gimbal on the little Mavic Mini, and we'll get you a real pretty flight to end this thing. The ice can cause problems, but it brings a certain amount of beauty with it too. And when you're out here in the middle of nowhere, that's kind of nice. Yep, one take outros. Good enough for who I work for. It's me. I work for me.